Thursday Sports Show. Now it's the tribute part of our show to the great late Russell Ebert. It's even hard to talk about now. I mean, to think that he's gone. But also to think about the great memories he gave all of us. Everyone. Whether you probably played against him or certainly when you played with him. Yeah. What a champion!
Well, he's just a champion fella. And, he would have made so many friends over the years that. Incredible. There's one.
There's one. David Wildy, I know, was a very, very good friend of Russell Ebert's. And Dave, when you look at it, you played against Russell. What was it like to play against him? And knowing that you're going to the ground to play Port Adelaide, but you're going to the ground probably thinking I'm also playing Russell Ebert.
Yeah, I think, Mando, good day to you and also Baz. I go back a bit further. My first recollection of Russell was 1968. I was an 8-year-old. Going to watch football, and I think Russell played full forward Adelaide Oval and
he did.
Kicked 6 or 7 goals. Didn't see him again until I played against Port Adelaide. Didn't know him then, but straight after he went to the media too once he finished his footy and worked 15 years with Russell. Played tennis at his house for 25 years. I think, Ando, you've been out there too.
I've been a couple of times.
Tuesday nights. We bought a house together. We've been on holidays. One of the great people I've met, I'd heard stories about Russell as a youngster. He's a little bit wild. I know you got Max James coming on after, but when you see Russell from then to Russell now and what he's done, not only in the field but off the field, he's incredible. Russell's never said, I can't do anything. He said, what do you need? What do you want? And he's Mr. Fix-It.
That's true.
From little kids, Baz, he's from little kids to elderly people.
Not a problem.
Russell never said no or I can't. I can't do that. He said, I can do that. And it was a massive shock for me when I heard the news that he had a really bad sort of cancer. Some people can survive that. He had the worst one, but the way he took it in his stride and the way he said, "Don't feel sorry for me. I've had a great life," and he had that attitude right to the end. And we've heard all the tributes and accolades, and people talk about Russell. I still think about Russell every day. Nearly every day something comes up about Russell, which is unusual when someone dies. You sort of think maybe once a week, maybe then it fades a bit.
Yeah, it fades.
Russell's almost daily, and we still see pictures of him and highlights of him and tributes about him.
Yeah, it's weird, isn't it? I mean, he was the only man that could really carry a texter without being a buffhead. Yeah. He deliberately carried a texter. Yeah. Because wherever he went, someone would always say, "Hey, Russ, could you sign this for me, please?"
He always signed cheques. He's still old school. Russell hated computers.
Exactly, mate.
Signed every,
Exactly.
I don't think he can have a cheque now, but Russell still had the chequebook out.
Now, you played some tennis against Russ. Now, a lot of people don't know how good a tennis player Russ was, but from what I gather, he's no Nick Kyrgios. That's for sure. But a very competitive beast.
Oh, boy,
was our Russell.
He described that well. He's no Nick Kyrgios. He had a good serve, though, Russell. Yeah. And I believe he sort of just worked his way into becoming a reasonable tennis player when he started. But typical Russell got better and better and better. And he was late 60s when we were still playing, or he'd still be playing now. Yeah. Very competitive, but always looked you in the eye and shook your hand after, depending the result.
He's very, very competitive. I did play tennis against. It was Ben and Russell, his son, and then myself and Craig Bradley played. And although we just play a set, and Bradley's a sensational tennis player, and so we've won. And I've said to Russell, thanks very much for the game. He goes, you're not going anywhere. Let's start the second set. Yeah. No.
That's it.
But I did mention, what was, you played a decade with the Roosters and 5 of those years you would have been playing against Russell. Yeah. Would have been, it was great to play alongside of him. I played at the end of his career.
But you played with him,
and you played against him. What was that like?
I think guys like that, when you think of, Barry was my first coach just for a year, then Mike Noonan came in. But when you see Russell on the field, a bit like Malcolm Blight, those guys are bigger than big. And Russell was basically 85, finished in 85 around there. Yeah. He came down in the forward pocket. I stood him for a little while thinking, hell, what am I standing a guy of his ilk? But just a good bloke and as fair as footballer you could see. I still love watching the vision of him.
I think that's the key, isn't it? Whether, of course your club respects Russell Ebert, but every club and every player respected Russell Ebert. And I think that's something very special.
He was funny too, Baz, because you were in the media, and ironically, Russell hated the media. Hated the media for a while. Then he became in. Then he got in the media, and he's very, very dry, very droll. But everything Russell said, you think, that's That's probably
Close.
right.
Yeah,
That's probably what he's saying is probably true.
Yeah.
And the other thing I remember about Russell is not once in all the time I've known Russell have I ever heard him talk about himself, unless you
Bingo.
ask a specific question, what's so-and-so like, or just stood Barry, or never once. And he always deflected to someone else.
Do you know, that's a very good call, because I would have interviewed Russ, I don't know, 1,000 times probably over the years at Albion and elsewhere. And he would not let you complete his stats before he came up. Like, if you started reading out Russell Ebert played
That's
400,
That's enough.
No, he'd be on his way up. No, I don't want any more of that. I don't want any more of that. Let's get on with it. So he didn't like that. Whereas me, I'd be going, come on, there's more there.
Well,
there's 4 medals. And
you got more Malcolm Blight in you, whereas Russell and Barry were. Barry's even, I'd say, more modest and more shy than Russell. Because Barry still lacks. Barry hates talking about himself or anyone talking about him, but that stays with me. Russell wasn't interested in people talking about him. He'd rather talk about other people.
I did a show in a place called Francis, which is about 50 k's out of Border Town. And my two guests for that night, Robber, Ebert.
Wow.
Now, that's not a bad night, is it? Sportsman's night. You can imagine how packed it was, which it was. But they spent the whole night talking about the other bloke.
Yeah.
They spent the whole night. You know, you tried to get them, you know, you're going to ask the same question to both of them. Who's the better player? You blokes, there's been a lot of said about who's the better player. I personally think you're both unbelievable. Yeah. But what do you think? And I know exactly what's coming here. Barry's going to talk about Russ, and Russ is going to talk about Barry, and that's exactly how it went.
A lot of material there, isn't there, Wills, when you think of those two players going
there is, but
head
Russell's
to head.
always maintained that Barry than Daylight. You can mention any other player,
That's
whether
right.
Blighty, Davies, anyone, Ando, any of these sort of Bradley.
Yeah.
But he's always held Barry there.
Yeah.
And it's not false modesty. That's the way Russell is. He probably takes himself out of the equation. Yeah. So he's saying, well, I'm saying it's Barry.
Yeah.
You know, don't put me anywhere, but it's Barry than the next.
Did you play that day? Sorry, mate. Did you play that day at Prospect when Ebert stood Robber at centre half, back centre half forward? It might have been before you, Will.
Before me. I heard about it.
It was before you.
I heard about it.
But that was just staggering.
I actually spoke to Mrs. Ebert about that game.
Yeah, staggering game.
And I said, who do you think's the best player, Barry or your son Russell? And she said, I watched a game, and Russell stood Barry, and they both were probably best players for their teams. But I believe Barry beat Russell that particular day.
It's funny, isn't it? Because other people believe the other way.
Yeah. So Russell's mum said that Barry got the.
I think probably Barry played more positions. He could play ruckman to rover. Russell could play centre half forward, centre half back, full forward, any of those, but perhaps not ruckman. But that's only difference. So.
Well, Russell said that Barry could have been an even bigger player had he been allowed to play in the middle in state games.
Yeah.
Because he wasn't allowed to play in the centre.
Yeah.
Well, not allowed, but we had 6 or 7 centre-men.
Yeah.
So someone had to play centre half forward.
Something.
So he had to play centre half forward in the state games. And Russ said, had he been allowed to play in the middle, they would have seen just how good, even though they knew how good Robram was. But those two were just incredible.
The 71, 72 grand finals that they played the big matches, didn't they? And that's when they were both at their prime. Both had won medals and absolutely at the prime.
Brilliant. Mills.
And you would have had a great time working with him as well, of course. You know,
as I said,
we talk about his football, but
Russell's he never carried any ID. He never seen him with a credit card. We're at the airport once. We had to show ID to get on the plane.
Yeah.
And we'd just been up in the Qantas lounge, and Russell loves his lollies. Grabbed a few lollies, and he's opened a minty wrapper and said, "Will this do for ID?" So I said, "Don't you know who this is?" This young girl didn't know Russell. Everyone knew Russell Lee.
That's right.
He had no ID on him. And they got him on the plane. Someone else knew him and away. But he gave her a minty wrapper. That's all the ID I've got on me.
That's Russ.
So, thanks so much for coming in, Wills, and sharing some of those stories. And congratulations, of course, on your work on AA, but also your career over 10 years at the North Adelaide Footy Club. Wonderful player. Thanks so much for coming in.
Great to see you, boys.
Cricketer.
Outstanding. We could just keep going with David, let me tell you. He ticks all the boxes.
Thanks, guys.
We'll be back after the break.